My first ever comedic inspiration was Mr. Bill Cosby. What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tunji's podcast. I'm your host, Tunji Taylor Lewis. Right now, at the moment, I have some tortellini boiling in some boiling water, getting ready to have tortellini and pesto. For those of you out there who don't know, and how would you know? You don't know me personally like that, but tortellini and pesto is one of my favorite meals in the world. Tortellini pesto with some Parmesan cheese or some mozzarella. Oh my goodness, my mouth is getting watery just thinking about it. One of my favorite meals in the world. I'm about to have it right now. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about my comedic inspirations. I forgot the person who suggested this topic to me on my Instagram story, but I'll be sure to give him a shout out in the caption below. I got a suggestion to do a podcast about who my comedic inspirations are. I love that question because it's something that I've thought about quite a bit. It's something that comes through quite a bit in the way that I perform. These are the people that I've been studying either since I was a kid by just watching them, or like intentionally studying them when I knew that acting and comedy was going to be, my life's purpose. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however way you want to look at it, my first ever comedic inspiration was Mr. Bill Cosby. Super uncomfortable to think about right now, just because of the man he turned out to be, and the scumbag that it turned out he was in all those years that we were loving him and enjoying him. But man, I have memories of being 5 years old, and Bill Cosby was truly the first comedian that I can remember just dying laughing at. And it's very funny of just how transcendent his comedy was across, all age groups, across all races, across all nationalities. Because when I watched episodes of The Cosby Show later, like in my teenage years, I realized that in my childhood I didn't actually understand a lot of the jokes. I think what I liked about Bill Cosby back then was was probably his facial expressions, like the way he performed, and the way he told stories. The way he told stories was so engaging and so entertaining that even though as a kid I didn't understand all the nuances of the jokes, I was still very entertained by the way he was performing the story. And obviously, we can talk all day about how, disgusting he was as a human being. But as a comedian, man, as a performer, this guy was, undoubtedly one of the greatest of all time for the very reason I just said, because his comedy was truly, truly universal, which is such a hard thing to do in comedy. Like, a lot of times comedians are very niche. Like, Amy Schumer appeals to, white women, and the 85 South Show appeals to, black people, and you guys get what I'm going with, right? Like, most comedians, at least in the start, have to start with a niche, and then they sort of build a universal audience around that. But Bill Cosby was truly a guy who appealed to everybody straight away. So that's my first comedic inspiration. The second comedic inspiration that became a comedic inspiration later in my life, because my mom didn't like him at first when I was a kid, was Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy's my hero. Eddie Murphy is like my inspiration. Like, Eddie Murphy is the guy who I want to be like. And it was funny, the story of my story of Eddie Murphy is like, when I was a kid, he was coming out with those kids movies like Daddy's Daycare, Dr. Dolittle, those sorts of things, right? And my mom knew Eddie Murphy as the Eddie Murphy from Delirious and Raw, the dude who was like cussing up a storm and very vulgar and just doing outlandish, outrageous things, right? That's the Eddie Murphy she knew. And so when she would say things like, I don't like that Eddie Murphy, he's vulgar and all that stuff, I'd be like, Mom, like, what are you talking about? Like, this is, it's Dr. Dolittle. It's, the Nutty Professor, like this guy, like, he's cool. Like, he's Norbit. Like, you have a problem with Norbit? What the hell was that? Motorcycle? Whoa. Hey. Can I record, please, motorcycle? Thank you. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, I'd be like, how could you have a problem with Norbit, Mom? Later on, I believe it was in like my first year of university. So this would have been in 2012, 2013. I sort of realized that comedy was the route that I wanted to take with my life. So I'm studying all comedy, I'm studying everything. I'm just trying to learn the art of funny. I put on Eddie Murphy Raw, and that shit changed my life. When I say that shit changed my life, like I truly mean that shit, like the level of brilliance and excellence in that one stand-up special was just absolutely, it just blew my mind. And a fun fact about my lip sync videos, the very first lip sync video that I ever did was a bit from Eddie Murphy Raw, and I'll probably include that in the podcast right now so that the people who are watching this can see like the very first lip sync video that I ever did was an Eddie Murphy video. So I'll play that for you guys right now.
Let me hear the men clap. Let me hear the men clap that are loyal to their women. Stop. You lying motherfuckers, stop. Stop. And kiss my ass. Fuck, I ain't no such thing as a loyal man. You lying motherfuckers, stop it. And the only reason you'll clap is because your woman sitting next to you right now when I asked the question, she looked at you like this. You gonna put your hands together? You better stomp your feet and light a match for this pussy, goddammit. Stand up and clap. Stand your ass up and clap. She's number one.
But yeah, man, Eddie is just the coolest. He's just the most confident. He keeps it 100%. He doesn't give a fuck if you believe what he believes. He's just gonna say how he feels. Master of impressions, and he's just like, his funny can't be explained. Like, you can't break it down like you can break down a Chris Rock joke or a Dave Chappelle joke. It's just, the guy is just, when you look at him, you just laugh, and like the dude is just incredible. So, fun fact about me: the comedian who I most idolize ever is Eddie Murphy. Another comedian who has a huge impact on me is obviously Kevin Hart, which I'm sure a lot of you would be able to guess by the amount of videos that I do of him. Kevin Hart was a guy whose comedy that I really enjoyed, like in his earlier days, like I'd say from 2006 to 2011, 2012, like I really really would laugh at every single thing he did. But Kevin Hart, more so than comedy, influences me as far as business and marketing and branding. He's a dude who's always been open with information about like how he hustles and how hard he works to get what he has. And he's a dude who's truly self-made, and who's just sort of like the first person to educate me on how having a big social media platform can influence you getting, in that big time movie or in that big time show. He was the first person to put it in my head of how, like, when he does movies, he's doing movies so that it serves as branding across the world, so that when he goes across the world to do his stand-up tours, people know who he is because they've seen him in a movie. So as far as business, as far as marketing, as far as selling yourself, as far as not just being an entertainer but being intentional about the moves you make, Kevin Hart was the first person to like put me onto that. And obviously, last but not least, you guys have heard me rant and rave about him and talk about him a whole bunch. Will Smith. Will Smith. I saw that Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I binged watched that bad boy. And, you know, I would say that Eddie Murphy is sort of like the pinnacle. He's sort of like the standard of performance and funny that can't be touched. But Will Smith was just sort of like, for me, a little bit more accessible version of Eddie, as far as like how amazing he was at acting and performing. And later on I realized he's just like Kevin Hart, as far as like him intentionally, like, you know, him intentionally just determining his own destiny and how he got to the top, with how he branded and marketed himself and how he was a businessman. So yeah, so those are my, how many was that? 4? Bill Cosby, Eddie Murphy, Kevin Hart. Yeah, so Mount Rushmore. That's my Mount Rushmore of comedy. Thank y'all so much for listening. Let me know who your favorite comedians are. Let me know who your Mount Rushmore of comedy is. 4 comedians. If you only had to pick 4 comedians, who would they be? Let me know. Love y'all.